I'm Ashton Addison from BlockWest Capital for Investment Pitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have George Harrap, co-founder of Step Finance. George, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashton. It's great to be here.
You're very welcome. I'm really excited to dive into the Solana ecosystem, how Step Finance is helping and bringing more people into the ecosystem, making it a lot easier. It really looks like you have quite a variety of tools to help out users, and I would love to dive into that. But I first just want to get a little bit of background on yourself in the space and how you came to co-found Step Finance.
Sure, yeah. Well, I've been in crypto for, I guess, a decade now. It's coming on 10 years this year, or maybe it's already passed, I guess, now. So, yeah, I mean, I discovered Bitcoin back in 2011. I was one of the early miners. I was one of those guys that was buying graphics cards off eBay to go and make a miner in my room, and I was a student at the time, and it was kind of a way to make a heater which makes money, and that's the best kind of heater that you can have, right? So, so yeah, I got into crypto. I didn't know anything about finance. I was studying electronics engineering at the time, but I got into it from, I guess, the tech side and the tech background, and everything from there I taught myself. Yeah, in 2014, everything was moving ahead. I wanted to get into the space a bit more. I decided to get on a plane, go to Hong Kong and co-found a company with a friend of mine, and we were the first remittance company using crypto to send money. That was a great experience. Learned a lot, along the way. But essentially, I guess in 2020, that previous chapter closed, and I was sort of getting into DeFi, and I was, with a couple of friends thinking, well, what's the best way that we can really make an impact here? I wasn't really clear. Like, I wanted to, if I was going to do my next my next startup, I wanted it to be something which was had an impact somewhere and had a real purpose and was something that was useful. So, initially we started with just a DCA platform, and we thought, hey, dollar cost averaging, buying various coins over a time period, pretty simple, straightforward, but it didn't really exist in the DeFi world. We tried Ethereum. It was way too expensive. We tried the side chains. Same sort of deal. There was no liquidity there as well at the time. And we found Solana. And we found that actually all of the things which people want to buy, all of the different DeFi coins, they're all there. They all have liquidity. The world's largest market maker, Alameda, is providing liquidity for them. If we were to do a DCA, well, there was a hackathon coming up, and that seemed like a good way to get into it. So at the start of this year, a couple of friends of mine got together and we decided to start Step Finance. And we entered the hackathon. We started with this DCA product. But through the end of the hackathon, we actually realized, like, we could just be another service provider that's like, hey, come use my product. It's good because this is what we do. And this is our narrow, thing that we do. But actually what Solana was lacking at the time was somewhere to bring all of these projects together in one place, as like a central dashboard, a central portfolio manager, a central place to execute these transactions. So that's essentially what Step Finance evolved into and has become today. And we're growing really fast. We have a team of 7 at the moment, and focused on Solana and building out cool products to make people's lives easier.
Very cool, George. And it definitely sounds like you're in it for the tech. If you've been in it for that long, buying graphics cards at the very beginning, not in finance, and you're still here. Yeah, you're still here. Yeah, and we're still early as well. So there's still the rest of our lives to go, and it's only going to continue to grow. So very interesting background story. And you mentioned quite a few little tips about Step Finance there. I'm wondering if you can dive a little bit deeper into Step Finance, sort of give an overview for the viewers on what are the different functionalities that they can do within Step Finance, and how can it help them get into the Solana ecosystem if they're not in there yet.
Yeah, so I guess to frame this, right, DeFi is a thing which is happening. I think everyone, is realizing that. And we think that it's not going to be a binary, 100% zero with Ethereum. All the DeFi stuff's going to be on Ethereum and nothing else elsewhere. We actually think that the future of crypto is going to be multi-chain. There's going to be a lot of different chains which do a lot of different things. And especially in the DeFi world, there is a place for other chains to excel in DeFi. And I really think that Solana's one of those candidates, if not the other candidate other than Ethereum. So, it might not be 100% zero. It might be, 50-50 or 60-40 or something like that at the end of the day. So, our thesis is that DeFi is going to continue to grow on Solana. And given that, there needs to be what we call the front page of Solana. So there needs to be a place where you can, manage your portfolio, see your positions across multiple contracts, of which, there's hundreds of projects now starting up on Solana from, DEXs, lending platforms, NFTs, all sorts of different things. And there needs to be, one place to really find out, like, what on earth is happening with my wallet? Like, did I forget my money somewhere? So that's the first pillar of what STEP's trying to do. The second pillar is what we also want to do is it's about monetizing user attention. So there are different applications which we all use every day in the DeFi world, right? Like MetaMask is a good example of that. That's a wallet that millions of people use. They interact with every day. They always have that tab up on their computer if they're dealing with this stuff. CoinGecko might be another one. Monitoring the gas fees might be another one if you're in Ethereum land. But there are things which always have a user's attention. And I think that is certainly really valuable, because once you have the user's attention, well, then you can be able to present them with things of which they can execute transactions and do stuff. And if they do stuff on your platform, then, you can earn a fee and revenue that way, right? So essentially, step two, I guess, for us is to be that place that has people's attention. And how do we do that? Well, that's step three, is we have to have things which, people actually want to use, products, services. In this case, we have a swap aggregator on Step as well. So we're the first on Solana to do that. Think of it kind of like 1inch on Ethereum, where there are multiple pools, there are multiple DEXs all across Solana, and we have a balancer which essentially selects the best price. So whatever you're trying to transact on Solana, Step is always going to be the best place for that. We also have things like, transaction history for reporting, people that need to get transaction data from the chain about what their wallet is doing. That doesn't exist anywhere else on Solana. We also have an NFT gallery. We have the largest coverage of NFTs on Solana currently. So, users can, when you're purchasing whatever you want in the NFT world, you need to be able to visualize it somewhere. Often it's on some strange website, somewhere on the internet, but we bring all of that together, and we also include a price in your portfolio as well. So, these things have prices, and they should be as part of your portfolio with a price. So, that's another element as well. But at the moment we have integrations with a lot of other different projects, lending platforms, and we have conversations with almost every team in Solana at the moment. But a bridge is also coming very soon in Solana, which is, I think, a necessary element for attracting a lot of this TVL, which is coming into the ecosystem. So, there's a lot of these different services, right? And these services we all put on Step. This is one place where people can transact, even across other people doing completely different stuff to us. You're still able to do that from Step. So, that's sort of a bit of an overview about what we are and what we do.
That's great, George. And it's there's a lot to manage, especially when you have so many different websites and so many different places to transact. To be able to put it into one spot is going to make it a lot easier, and to also be able to just see it in one little chart. I say you can have like it all broken down on where your NFTs, when's your lending happening, and so. But I guess right now, it only is going to show things in the Solana ecosystem. You'll still have to manage other blockchains outside of that as well, right?
Yeah. So at the moment, we're just focusing on Solana, right? Like our focus is to be number one there, and to really have a footing in the Solana ecosystem. But having said that, like, it has always been our mission that, look, we think DeFi is going to be multi-chain. So what other multi-chains come out in the future, whether it's Polkadot, whether it's BSC or something like that. These are things which we're thinking that, yes, eventually this is something that we'd like to be able to add some value there as well. But Solana at the moment is a little bit bespoke because it uses a different programming language to some of these other chains. So that can be a blessing and a curse. But it can also mean that there's a little bit of a barrier there to be able to interact with other chains. But for the moment, there's so much to be done on Solana. We're quite happy, in our position where we are at the moment.
Definitely, that's great to hear, George. And maybe you could touch a little bit more on the Solana ecosystem. I know your team obviously chose that as a great starting point. But for the people that are, for the majority, in Ethereum, or just trying to figure out why they should move and start using assets on Solana and NFTs and DeFi, can you give a scope of where it's at right now, maybe in comparison to Ethereum, and where you expect it to be in the next 12 months with the growth of the Solana ecosystem?
Absolutely. So I think things have really kicked off this year for Solana and some of these alternative DeFi chains. So, I mentioned before that the DCA contract that we were building, we did that on Ethereum. We had 6 users, and it was going to cost us $180 just in transaction fees to execute just one trade, right? So you can imagine that, okay, if we're charging 1% a trade and we only have 6 users and it's costing us $180, how much money do we need to have in our DCA contract to even break even? It's something like millions of dollars or something like that, right? So, fees and scalability is a real problem. And, I think that's one of the core tenets of where Solana's at, is that it's trying to solve this this speed and scalability problem. So we saw the Solana ecosystem really rocket up in TVL this year. I think TVL is currently at about 2 billion, something like that. And as I mentioned before, the world's largest market maker is making markets there on the DEX. So there's a DEX which spans the entire blockchain itself. It's called Serum, and that's kind of like a focal point for liquidity. Unlike Ethereum, where they might be like, I guess you'd call it different islands. So you might have Uniswap land, you might have Sushi land, you might have Balancer, and they're all kind of a bit isolated. And that's only going to further fragment with L2s coming down the pipeline as well. But with Solana, everything's on the same level, and there's one DEX, that everyone uses fully open source. So, that's certainly one key element. We see, I mentioned before, there's been a couple of hackathons. Those hackathons recently, I think the last one, there was something like 10,000 individual developers which signed up. And there was hundreds of projects which got made from that, which is really incredible. So, when we're talking about growth of a new ecosystem, that's great to see. So, these things are anything from, gaming, blockchain gaming. It could be the lending protocols I mentioned before, kind of like your Aves, like Cream, these sorts of things. There's about 4 of them now on Solana. We've got various different DEXs. We've got leverage protocols as well. Like Mango would be on Solana land, the equivalent of something like a DYDX in Ethereum land, somewhere where you can, manage perps and so on. So like everything that you can maybe think of in DeFi, which exists on Ethereum, there's often a counterpoint to it on Solana right now. And they're only really just getting started. It's kind of, early days yet, but I think we're pretty much at feature parity for the most part. And also to keep in mind, there's lots of different wrapped Ethereum coins as well, ERC20s on Solana. So I've been saying before, if you want to buy Sushi, Wi-Fi, these other CRV, these other tokens, which are pretty popular in the DeFi world on Ethereum, like they exist on Solana, and instead of paying $180 per transaction, it's something like a fraction of 1/10 of a cent or something like that, and you can do that instantly. So yeah, very cool. And I just might also say, we've had a lot of people joining Step and Solana who've perhaps never used Ethereum before. And they maybe came from BSC, or maybe they came from some other chain, which, was essentially cheap, because there was a point earlier this year when, it was like $100 to just do a swap in Ethereum with the gas fees. So I think, there's a lot of users which haven't been exposed to the whole breadth of DeFi, but what, they really do care about fees, and it really is an important thing for them. And they probably would never want to go to some chain which is going to charge them a lot of money in that respect. So, I think Solana has a good niche, right there.
Definitely. Yeah. Great explanation, George. And I also want to touch on, because we haven't talked about it yet, the Step Finance token and how Step is involved in your ecosystem and how it relates to Solana and how it provides value for the users in the ecosystem. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, so I think the key point there is provides value, right? And before I was mentioning, like, if we're this gateway, this front page of Solana, which has people's attention, which is showing them useful information that they care about, which is providing them useful products that they can execute transactions on, that is a good place to be. So, for example, we can look at one of our features is compounding, auto compounding. So, like, when you're in a yield farm, you might want to reinvest your profits back into the yield farm. And that's a way to essentially get a higher yield over time, an APY versus an APR, different things, right? So, for us, we take a small fee on that. The swaps is another one where we take a small fee on that as well. And there's a couple of other features coming down the pipeline pretty soon, which I mentioned the bridge before, which will also be taking a fee. So along the way, there are ways of which, look, we're providing a useful value-adding service which people want to use, and they're willing to pay a fee for it. And this is generating revenue for the protocol. Now, what is the best way in this decentralized world that we live to, say, distribute the gains, I guess, of a revenue in a protocol? In the old days, it was a company, right? And the company was incorporated in some jurisdiction. It had a bunch of people that sit on the board, all of this kind of stuff, right? And generally, the company made money. And if I thought the company was great, it might not be possible for me to invest in that company. I guess what's happened in the DeFi world is a lot of these tokens and protocols have come along where it's, if you become a token holder, then you have some sort of skin in the game regarding the actual protocol itself. And if the protocol does well, then your assumption is that, as a token holder, you might do well as well. So that's the whole idea behind the STEP token. A percentage of fees, 100% of the money which is made by the protocol goes back to buyback. This is a common thing in the crypto land. So there's buyback and distribute to stakers who are staking the token. And essentially that's how it started. So, the STEP token's been around for about 3 months now, a bit over 3 months. We had a very successful launch, the biggest on Solana. We had 26,000 active users at the time of launch. We have a lot of big names on board. And going forward, it's all about this point between, essentially, you want your revenues to grow and you want your emissions to go down. And you reach a point where there's an inflection point. And that's the important part where essentially, your revenues and buybacks eclipse your new coins coming into circulation, which puts net positive pressure on the price of the token. So everything that we're doing at the moment is to really build revenue for the protocol. And we can only do that by adding things that people want and are willing to pay for.
Sounds great. And congratulations on that successful launch. It's still so early on, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the platform is going to continue to grow. And speaking of that, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to look towards the future. Maybe you can talk about some of the major updates that you and your team are planning to roll out with STEP between now and the end of 2021.
Absolutely. So, there's a couple of themes. Number one, yield farming is certainly a niche which we occupy. So we are going to be debuting our own AMM very soon. And part of that will be a yield farming creator for new teams that perhaps, want to set up a pool. They want to set up an emissions pool and they don't know where to do it. At the moment, you kind of have to ask permission from various protocols and be like, hey guys, like, can you please list our token and these sorts of things? So, for us, it's just going to be, you click a few buttons and you can do it all permissionlessly. So I think, on the yield farming front, on the AMM front, and that's also going to hook into our aggregator as well. And it's kind of like Bancor, if anyone's familiar with that, where, a side of every pool is actually in the STEP token itself. So it becomes a liquidity sink. So the AMM is one. The other theme that we're seeing is NFTs. And we want to be this marketplace for NFTs. We already have this gallery. The next step is really sort of allowing people to buy and sell tokens, to be able to browse all of the active tokens, all of the active NFTs that are available, and be that central focal point in Solana for the NFT world. So these are sort of the two big places that we're going at the moment, is the marketplace and the AMM.
Very cool, George. And for the viewers that are looking to follow along with those updates and just to start using Step right now, what's the best way for them to get involved in the community and to learn more?
Absolutely. So our website, step.finance, that's the best place to go. We have the social links. We have a Twitter, which is always posting our latest updates, and the Discord, of course. We're very active in Discord. We have a good community. So please stop on by step.finance and come and join one of our communities.
Sounds great, George. All the best with Step Finance moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Thank you so much, Ashton. Will do.